The following is a presentation of WLCN 96.3 FM and WLCNonline.com. Live video streaming of this event is made possible in part by WLCN's live stream technology sponsor, Me Realty, located at 602 Keokuk Street in Lincoln, and online at merealty.com. Good morning. It is 2 minutes past 8 o'clock, time for the Viewpoint program, a little bit earlier than usual this week. My name is Lloyd Kirby. I am the marketing manager here at WLCN, and I'm joined by Jim Ash on the control board, and too shy for a camera. I offered to set you up one.
We don't need to see me on camera.
Right.
We have, it might break or something. Who knows?
Well, we'll roll the dice on it someday. We actually have a two shows in one today. A little surprise guest sneaking in on us. A representative from the Oasis Senior Center, Deborah Pollock, is here with us. So, Ms. Pollock, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for fitting me in.
Absolutely.
You are the last guest from Bill Gossett. Do you know that?
No, that's very
maybe.
interesting.
Yeah, maybe. We might get somebody next week.
That's true.
Okay.
We don't know. So, but anyway, as we mentioned, or as Jim mentioned, Bill had been speaking with folks at the Oasis for a while, hoping to get a representative, and according to you, we had to go down the food chain a little bit, and that's how we got you to show up, which I totally disagree with.
It is what it is.
Well, but you come in with the title of president, so I mean that's got to carry some sort of clout, doesn't it? Or
I guess it's the first they go to on the list.
okay, well there you go.
It was me.
In your role as president, there is it president like of the board?
Yes,
okay.
as president of the board.
And so, what kinds of do you just kind of oversee activities of the Oasis, or make suggestions, or what is the role of the board at the Oasis?
Well, we have board meetings every month, and I lead those. And we have a wonderful board out there, and they do a lot to keep the Oasis going. And we're a support for our director, Krista Miller.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, and a place like the Oasis, of course, can't exist without the support of the community, and I know lots of businesses and organizations step up and try to support, but in addition to that, there are some events that the Oasis does to benefit the community, as well as opportunities for the community to support some different fundraisers and things like that. Is there anything like that coming up on the schedule that folks might want to know about?
Well, the fair is right around the corner, and on August 4th, which is a Friday, the fair does have a senior day, and you're able to go into the fairgrounds and park for free if you're 65 or older until 5 o'clock. And we're going to be out there, and at 9:30 to 10:30 we'll have a fitness class with Georgia Allison, who does a lot of classes out at the Oasis. Mm-hmm. And at 10:30 to 12 we're going to have bingo, and then at noon to 2 we're going to have some entertainment to be announced. And so we're going to be out there for a while, and we hope a lot of people come out and take advantage of the free admission.
And of course you'll have a table set up with information about the Oasis if folks are interested in the different programs and activities.
And our staff will be there to answer any questions.
Including yourself?
Well, sure. I love the fair.
It's just coming to a radio station you aren't too fond of.
Well, this is the kind of a new thing for me. So.
Okay, all right. Well, you're doing fine. So, we, in our community calendar and our website, we try to post as many activities that the Oasis has, not only the special occasion like the fundraising events that happen periodically, but the everyday activities such as, free bingo and pinochle and different things like that. I got to tell you, it's as the person who puts our website together, it's tough trying to keep up with all the things that are going on at the Oasis, because it seems like every single day there's some activity or something happening, and it's not just all the similar type of activity. There are games, there are painting classes, there are, I believe I've seen exercise classes and country western dance classes, so really there's something for everyone. And it's I spoke with Krista probably about a year ago on a show I host here, the 4 p.m. 411, and she was telling me it's really offers a lot, but it's also a very economical offering for seniors who would like to become members of the Oasis. Yes,
well, there is a lot going on out there, and that's why we encourage everyone to join. To be a member, I think right now it's $20, because you get the newsletter, and it's a quarterly newsletter that's sent out, and there is a lot of stuff on there, and it really, gives you day by day activity listings, so you know what's going on, because there is a lot that goes on there.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's not just a bunch of elderly folks sitting in a corner, knitting or crocheting or something.
No, there's not. Though we do have a sewing group out there. We have a lot of groups out there.
Yeah, the So What's Happening group that meets monthly, and the book club, and all sorts of activities going on. As we mentioned, those activities and the Oasis itself could definitely benefit from sponsorships from the community. If folks are interested in donating, whether it's a business or an individual, whether it's giving goods or monetary, or maybe just donating some time or coming out and teaching a class, is there an opportunity for folks to do that, and who would they get in touch with if they were interested
if you
in
could
that?
call out there to the Oasis or just come out there. We're open 9 to 3 every day, weekday. So we would welcome any of that. Sounds great to me.
Okay. Is there, I can't remember, did you mention, I know around the Balloon Fest there's a lot going
Right.
on with the Oasis, and kind of one of your bigger fundraisers, I would guess,
Yes.
happening with all the activity. You want to tell us about that?
Yes, we have the vendor show out there around we have a walking track, and the vendors set up around the track. And I do believe there's booths still available. I think they're approximately $40, and you just would have to call out there and get your name on the list. And we have a lot of people that come out there that day, and it's really nice and easy to park out there and to walk around the track and to see all the vendors. And then we serve food too during that day from 11 to 1. We serve brats, and it's really a lot of people come out there for that. There's just something. It's really nice to have that.
Right. There's usually, I know in the past there's been the vendor booths, but there's also been food served. Has there also been, is that a weekend when there's a car show as well, or is that a different weekend?
Well, sometimes there is a car show out
Okay.
there, but I don't know that there's one on that day. There just some last minute things happen out there. And
Sure. And I believe there was just a car show at the Oasis, maybe on July 8th. I remember seeing the date. But so once again, for folks who may not be aware, you mentioned the walking track.
Right.
It's not maybe as visible from the road that
Right.
people may not be aware. It's sort of a hidden gem and,
Yes, it
something
is.
the Oasis has to offer folks. Can you tell us a little about that?
Well, it's right behind the Oasis, and again, you don't have to be a member to come out and to join in the activities out there. And we do have the walking track, and a lot of people use that, but we also have a room with curves equipment that you can come out and use. You just have to sign up for it because you're in there by yourself. And we have classes at night that Georgia Allison does, and there's a fee for that. I think there's a discount if you're a member. But so we try to keep our seniors healthy and encourage anyone to come out there and use those things.
Well, I think it's kind of a misconception about the fact that you don't have to be a member to go out there and enjoy everything. I always assumed that you had to be a certain age, obviously 65, and go out there and pay a $20 membership, and then you can come out anytime.
No, you don't have to be a member. It just gives you some discounts because we have day trips and different things like that you get a discount from. And you get the newsletter, which, like you said, there's a lot going on, so it's very helpful to have that.
Who does the newsletter?
Well, our program person does that, and we have a new one out there. She just started, so
Cool.
We're sort of excited about that. But we do have a lot of groups out there, and we also have a lot of services that help the seniors, that need help with, blood pressure, Social Security, the veterans, the license plate discounts. There's just a lot of stuff. And we have legal aid out there, free legal aid, and we have someone that comes and does foot care, which has a fee. So there's just a lot of things we do out there that is a busy place, and you can just come out there and just have a cup of coffee too. You don't have to do anything. We have a gift shop, and we have we sell a lot of flowers out there for like the cemeteries. We make those out there, and that's a big thing for people. We can't keep them in the gift shop.
Right.
So
Cool.
Yeah, I've seen those posts on social media. It seems like come see our selection of floral displays, and then within a few hours,
they're
if
gone.
not the next day, it's like, well, sorry, we're out.
We work as hard as we can on those.
Right, and it's obviously very successful. Something you mentioned, though, is the day trips. That's something I've neglected to mention. I've noticed those, once again, it's not just a stereotypical, I don't know what a stereotypical day trip would be for a senior citizen, but there's a variety of cities, a variety of activities, and different businesses and venues and eateries that the trips are. Some are close to home and some are a little bit further away, but
usually involves food.
But usually there is a note in there, even if it's some other activity, and we will be stopping somewhere for lunch. So.
Right. we do have one coming up in July 30th to appeal to the guys. So it's the normal corn belters. So they're going to have it. I don't know what's left on the bus, but it's air conditioned, and so that would be something. And we just do different things. We've gone on, just all around, but
right.
And you never know what it's going to be. And we're getting a new program manager, so who knows?
Yeah, I've noticed. I think I've seen trips to Springfield to like rummage sale,
yes,
garage sale type antique
yes.
places. To Clinton to the tea room.
Yes.
Around the holidays, I think went up to the Barn Theater.
They were going there a lot. In Monticello too, there was a glass blowing.
Oh, that's right.
Person and. Yes.
Sounds to me like Lloyd's been checking you guys out.
I know. I like it.
Is it getting that age or something? Or are you trying to think of something to do?
Well, we do have an events calendar on our website.
Oh, that's true.
So,
You're the events guy. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So if folks are interested in learning more, is there a website or Facebook group or phone number they can call to get more information?
Well, we're on Facebook. And yes, we have a phone number that's 217-732-6132. And we're on Facebook also. And like I said, the newsletter tells you all the ways to be able to contact us. So
there you go.
Very good.
Appreciate all our members.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We're going to take a break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the weather. We've got meteorologist Ed Shimon for the National Weather Service joining us in just a moment.
We are back on the Viewpoint program. I almost said the 4 p.m. 411, but our thanks to Deborah Pollack from the Oasis Senior Center stopping out and telling us about some of their upcoming activities. And now round two of the show, our scheduled guest, Mr. Ed Shimon, who is, I had your official title here, and I covered
Are
it
you
up.
the chief meteorologist or just a regular meteorologist?
I'm one of the managers there. I'm a warning coordination meteorologist.
That's what I was looking for. I knew it was a mouthful. So,
Yep.
So what's happening with the weather?
Well, we kind of flipped the switch, and summer's going to come in here. We're going to be pretty hot coming up, but we've had a lot of active weather in the last month and a half of severe storms, very heavy rains, not necessarily right in Lincoln, but tornado track not too far south of here, just on the north side of Lincoln, and shut down I-55 for a bit as all those power lines got knocked over in exit 133.
Yeah.
So a very impactful storm system that came through on June 29th. We called it a derecho,
Right.
which basically means there was at least 400 continuous miles of relatively continuous continuous damage.
Oh, wow.
Of 60-mile-an-hour winds or greater, and the width was about at least 60 miles wide. But that went from Nebraska, curved through Indiana, and all the way down south through Tennessee, and it was about 860 miles of continuous damage. So it was a very impactful storm, not only in central Illinois, but across the Midwest.
And you're with the Lincoln National Weather Service. How many of those facilities are there around the country?
There's 122 National Weather Service offices, including Guam, Puerto Rico, Alaska, Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, all the way over in Guam. Yeah,
wow.
So that's a weather service.
We have a radio
territory.
station in Guam from this company. Yeah, one of our sister stations.
So do you have a certain, is there a certain region that the Lincoln office sort of reports on or it specializes in?
Yeah. We have 35 counties of central Illinois, going from Galesburg down to Lawrenceville on an angle, and then from Jacksonville up to Danville. So it's kind of right in the center of the state. And generally, it's guided by the radar coverage. Our radar is in Lincoln, and about 250-mile circle, usually around each office, is generally what counties they are responsible for in issuing, hazardous weather information and forecasts for.
Right. And you mentioned hazardous weather. I'll just get to the topic that I think is sort of in the back of everyone's mind. We've been talking about, you hear about the global warming and the greenhouse gases and so forth, and all the weather events. And then there's another school of thought that, there's just sort of this natural weather pattern throughout history, and there are sort of outliers of extreme heat and extreme cool, and this is just one of those. Is there any sort of a meteorological explanation for what's going on with the weather as of late?
Yeah, you try to tie it to global warming in the short term, but that's really a long-term kind of a focus. So it takes history of past weather to kind of gauge whether this is actually tied directly to the warming of the earth. But certainly, the warming atmosphere can hold more moisture, and more moisture is evaporating from the oceans. We do have, loss of some ice in the Arctic. I know the Antarctic had some areas that gained some ice, and there's, some debates there. But in general, the overwhelming evidence is that there is a warmer temperature in the atmosphere with, over the last, 20, 30 years. And that can lead to stronger storms because they have more moisture in them. The moisture is kind of the fuel. So not necessarily that we haven't seen really strong storms, but the intensity of the storms seem to be a little bit of an uptick. When we have a strong storm, it's really strong. When we have heavy rain, it is 8 inches of rain, and there's flooding. Like Chicago just got hit, July 2nd.
Right.
8 inches of rain in an urbanized area is not a good thing. So it's the intensity that kind of seems to be upticked in the droughts. The drought sets up in April and May, and we're like, we haven't seen rain for 8-9 weeks. It's the kind of shifts like that extremes are starting to pop up a little bit more frequently. It's not a 500-year flood anymore. Well, it is a 500-year flood, but it's happening twice a year, Right. So, things like that are starting to show up a little bit more.
And so in terms of the more extreme weather and the getting warnings out and things like that, I'm sure over the past few years the technology has advanced and has given you a little bit more accuracy and some better tools to be able to predict and get warnings out to folks about those extreme conditions.
Yeah, exactly. The satellites, especially the technology that's been added to the satellite systems, the scanning rates, the various frequencies of information that they can pull out, like the dust storm that happened in early May. There's a channel on the satellite that just looks at that type of debris in the atmosphere and can show us in a certain color, and it's pink on the images that we look at. But once we see that set up on the dust channel, so to speak, we're like, okay, dust getting picked up. Maybe we got some issues going on here. So that technology, number one, and then the radar is always getting a little bit of tweaks. The algorithms on how it can search for circulations really helps us searching for intense rainfall. Those kind of programs, so we can get ahead of flash floods. Because most of the time, early on in my career, it's like you didn't issue a flash flood warning until you got a phone call that, oh, it is that bad. Oh, because the radar can show you what's happening, but it's not always what's hitting the ground. So a lot of help is coming from the technology to get us in a mode so that we can issue warnings, 3, 4, 5 minutes faster than we could before, which time saves lives. If something tornadic is coming or really strong, intense winds, getting that word out, even if it's just a few minutes early, can save lives. Because when I was doing the Robinson tornado damage survey, somebody had gotten an initial tornado warning, and they're like, oh, that, kind of looking to the west and seeing, and then they got a tornado emergency on their phone, like, oh, this is really hitting. So they got out of their mobile home, and within a minute or two, it was completely sheared and destroyed in multiple directions. They would have not survived had they not seen that tornado emergency and got out of the way. They drove away and got out of the path, but luckily, minutes save lives. It really does, in really hazardous situations like that.
Should mention that if anybody has any questions or comments, give us a call, 217-648-5510. You mentioned tornadoes. Are we on pace to break a record for a number of tornadoes this year?
We are, as a state.
Especially in January and February.
Right. January 3rd, we had 8 tornadoes in Illinois, which set a record for the number of tornadoes in an event in January. One of them was up near Chicago. But, yeah, I think we're in the upper 80s for Illinois, and that sets us right at about number 3 or 4. We're right on the cusp there of hitting number 3, but all since 1950. So any year in Illinois, we're already up at number 3, and we've got plenty of time left this year. We're only in July, and we've been seeing more cool season tornadoes like the October, November, December, starting to show up. So we just have. We're already pretty high, and it doesn't look like things are going to shut down anytime soon with the pattern here. So it just put everybody on notice that you never know when a tornado might affect your area, because it really can damage a home and cause a lot of disruption of your life. We had one go through just south of Springfield with the June 29th case, and your home's destroyed. Now what?
Right.
Or even just the roof ripped off. You can't live in it. You got to find another place to live. So you always got to be ready, take action. If we have warnings out, you never know if your roof's going to make it or your walls are going to make it, and just take cover.
So as they're talking about all this tornadic activity and just the extreme weather, is there any sense of any sort of relief in sight for things coming up?
Well, once the heat wave sets in at the end of this month, that's going to kind of put a heat dome over us. So the storm track is in essence going to be, they call it a ring of fire, but when high pressure sets up in summer, around the border of the high pressure, usually in the plains to Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, there'll just be a ring of storms that flare up every afternoon, and we're going to be in the heat for probably a solid 5 days, starting early next week already. Or maybe even late this weekend. So once that sets up, storms can't really develop. The air is kind of sinking in the high pressure area, and it's just heating up. So we'll be in the 90s for several days. So that'll give us a reprieve from the storms. The next real chance of storms doesn't look like it's till maybe early August, when a cold front comes through, like August 3rd or 4th, and at least in the extended models that I'm looking at. So we're going to get a little bit of a break from storms here for the last part of July, probably.
Is this due to the El Nino, or is this just another pattern that's why?
Yeah, some of the heat that's set up, the jet stream kind of started the heat dome out in the southwest U.S. a little sooner, and they think that some of that might have been tied to the El Nino shift in the jet stream off of the Pacific as it entered into the west coast U.S. So, that heat wave is going to shift in. They've been having really high heat down there. We're not going to quite see the hundreds, but we'll be in the 90s, which for us, is definitely noticeable, and the heat index can creep into the hundreds. So, a little bit of that might be tied to El Nino, although it's conjecture. But El Nino does not usually affect summer as much as the winter season. El Nino is a more of an impactful jet stream, noticeable jet stream impacts in the winter time. So, more. Is
that the warming of the waters, and just the opposite of La Nina is the cooling? Is that what that is? Or?
Right. Yeah. In the equatorial Pacific off of South America, they monitor near the equator. I don't know how many hundreds of miles of the ocean, and there's a zone that's called Nino 3-4, but it's just a little further off the coast, and that typically is where the airflow is far enough west of South America to affect the jet stream in the United States, and they monitor that. And the water is warmer right now, and not. It's like it's about a 1 degree Celsius, a half degree to 1 degree Celsius. What sounds like that's not much, but
right.
When you're dealing with that much ocean, it's a lot of energy. Even 1 degree warmer ocean is energy for storms that develop, and jet streams feed off of that. So, a moderate El Nino, I think, is finally when it gets up to about 1.5 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
It says El Nino once it reaches a half a degree warmer than normal, and then that's a weak El Nino, and then a moderate El Nino is like 1.5 degrees, and then a strong El Nino is, I think, up 3 degrees above normal. So. Or close to that. So it sounds like it's not much, but it really is an impactful amount of energy that can affect the jet stream across North America.
And our guest is Ed Shimon from the National Weather Service. Once again, if you have questions or comments, 217-648-5510, the number to call. We've been talking about the different extreme weather, tornadic activity, being able to predict that. We've used the word modeling here a few times. How exactly do you go about making those predictions? What resources are at your disposal in addition to the radar? Are there certain other radars or other agencies that are providing information that go into those predictions that come out of the Weather Service office?
Yeah, we have a wide range of models, so to speak, that are being run, and there's a modeling agency in Washington that we rely on, and they have a whole suite of models. I mean, there's probably the exact number escapes me, but it's at least 15 different models that we run, and basically it's just different physics and how the atmosphere responds to a storm developing, or there's various physics that we can tweak between the models and the resolution of the model. How small of a box is it trying to forecast for? Mm-hmm. So the high resolution models have a lot of smaller boxes and smaller domains that we run them on. But those things give us information on what the potential is for a certain scenario. And we'll run one model 50 times, tweaking the physics, and get an ensemble, we call it. Mm-hmm. So we'll ensemble multiple models, and then we'll look at all the solutions, and then we come up with what's called probabilistic chance. Okay, there's a 50% chance because 50% of the models showed this scenario, and then 30% showed this. So we'll give probabilistic information, and people can make decisions based on, like if we say there's a 60% chance that you're going to get 4 inches of snow, is that impactful for you? Is that enough? Or is a 30% chance of 6 inches of snow? We're like, I'm going to take my chances, but the models are so much more robust now, and they're getting faster and faster. We're pumping money into some of the more large-scale models so that we can get a better global picture of the weather. I know people are saying, the European model is ahead of us, and they were for a while. They had pumped money into their infrastructure a little bit earlier than we did, but we caught up. The National Weather Service Modeling Agency has dedicated quite a bit of resources to make sure that our next phase of models is equal or better than what the European model is doing right now. And we want to make sure that we have as much effort into how we can help people get a decision point to help them take care of the people or businesses around them.
Very good. Here's just a personal question. I had heard this once, and I don't know if it's true, but you're the perfect person to ask. I had heard once that if you listen to the forecast, and the forecast is there's a 30% chance of rain today. Now, does that mean that 30 times out of 100 it's going to rain, or that there's a probability of rain for 30% of the area in which the forecast is being made?
Yeah, that comes up a lot, and it's actually it is both, really.
Oh, okay.
Out of any 10 days, 3 of them will rain, and when we're forecasting, based on radar coverage of an area, 30% of the area probably will have some type of coverage of storms on any particular afternoon or whatever, and when we say that. So it really is conveying both methodologies, and whichever one clicks for your understanding, personally, that's what we try to go with. But it is a combination of both of those.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I'd always wondered that.
So, like tonight, supposed to be a 30% chance of showers and thunderstorms. So, doesn't necessarily mean 70% chance of no rain. It could mean a 30% of listening area, that coverage area.
Yeah.
And you go by zones. You don't go by zones anymore, do you?
We do county forecast. We do issue our forecast by county number yet, so because that's the structure of our society still is county based.
Okay.
So that's how everything is. Because when you click on if you have the internet at home, and you click on the exact point in your county where you live, you're actually getting that 3 square kilometer forecast box that pops up in our digital database, and that's your forecast. But if you look at this, and it's kind of a legacy product, but it's called our zone forecast product. Used to be the rip and read for anyone that wanted to forecast, they had to let it print off, rip it, and read it. Now you got obviously digital media has got everything all just point and click, and that's an actual point-specific forecast. So things are changing, and the zones are going by the wayside eventually. But everything's going to be all digitized, and hopefully our warnings will be able to be more fluent in terms of where we have a warning for. Because right now it is county-based, and we're trying to get it to be what's called forecasting a continuous threat. So there'll be like a cone of threat, and the 100% will be a small little cone, and then the 90% will be a little wider range, and we'll be updating that more frequently than the 1 hour. You got tornado warning, 1 hour, boom, and wait. Is
there something in the air or the terrain here in the Lincoln-Logan County that whenever I look at the radar, and there's these storms coming, boy, they're massive storms, and some are not so massive, but by the time they get to Lincoln, they're pretty much fizzled out, they dissipate, and there's nothing there. Is there something about Lincoln-Logan County that has an effect on these storms?
There's nothing geographically that affects it. It's all just luck of the draw, pretty much, because Peoria people bring that up to me too, and I'm like, Lake Peoria on the Illinois River is not big enough to really impact the storms and say, okay, the storm comes up, go, holy cow, there comes Peoria, I got to split.
Yeah.
It's just
5 minutes later,
occurs,
they look and it's gone.
By the storm evolution of the day, what energy they have to feed off of, what moisture they have to feed off of. If they start to lose the type of airflow that needs to fuel that storm, it's just going to start to either dissipate, or sometimes they do split. Storm splits are a regular evolution of thunderstorms. As the updrafts develop, sometimes you'll get two cores that kind of start to dominate, and that storm literally will split, and they'll both go on their different directions. So it's just a normal evolution of storms, and it just happens to happen very near cities, or at least perceptively near cities.
Yeah.
Well, and part of I think what I notice is if there's a threat of weather, I'll go online and look at the radar, and you can see precipitation. But I think you mentioned it earlier with the different weather events, that just because there's precipitation on the radar, that doesn't necessarily mean that precipitation is reaching the ground. So you might see green or yellow or red, but by the time it moves and makes its way through the atmosphere, it's not always folks on the ground aren't always receiving that.
Exactly, yeah, because a lot of times the initial onset of precipitation is delayed. The radar will be looking like it's got to be raining, and the dry air below the cloud base will just evaporate the rain before it reaches the ground. The radar's looking at the cloud and says, holy cow, there's a lot of moisture up there. It's got to be falling. Well, it is, but it's not reaching the ground because of the dry air below the cloud base. And that actually affects a lot of winter cases, because we're like, it should be already a half an inch of snow on the ground and nothing's happening. In the summer is the same thing, although it's not quite as dramatic. But a lot of radar images are false gotchas. You think you're really in the rain, and it's not quite there yet.
And you mentioned that Peoria, the waterways in Peoria probably aren't enough to impact, so I'm guessing Lincoln Lakes probably doesn't really make a significant...
Not quite enough, yeah. You really need a sizable area of water to actually impact a storm, like a portion of a much larger lake, like Southern Lake Michigan or something like that, where you actually have an air mass that had some residence time, and the quality of the air that's getting drawn into the storm is different than the air over the land. And it's just not enough residence time over some of these smaller entities and lakes that they'll have the air change its quality so that as it gets drawn into the storm, because that's what really affects a storm. What is it feeding on? Mm-hmm. And if it can't feed on what it needs to be a storm, then it's going to not continue. So some of those lake areas that are much larger can actually affect that. Yeah.
And you mentioned the term quality of air. We've had the Canadian wildfires happening as of late. I've seen in the news how that affects folks in terms of respiratory illnesses and things like that. Does that have any impact on the weather in our region?
It can allow clouds to form, because clouds form on particles in the air, and the more particles there are, the more opportunity there is for clouds to actually, the moisture in the air to condense on. So it can help create more cloud cover, and it was cloudy. I mean, when we had the smoke, it not only was just smoke, but there was moisture actually condensing on the smoke particles too. But it just creates a situation where you can have a more cloudy sky, not necessarily storms get fueled by anything that's related to the dust, because it actually, when you have a dust layer smoke layer that's that thick and blocks the sun, it reduces the heating of the earth, so it can kind of actually limit the fuel that storms need, because the hotter the lower air mass is in the ground layer, the more fuel that storms can have for that day. So the smoke layers are definitely reducing the heating of the earth and the intensity of storms that can sometimes develop on a day where there would have been no smoke in the area.
That's interesting. So at the National Weather Service office, obviously you make predictions and forecasts on the weather. Are there other sort of uses for the information that comes out of the National Weather Service other than just weather modeling, or how is that applied? Obviously, with a lot of farmers in the area, that's certainly a big tool that they use or a resource they use. But are there other things going on other than just predicting upcoming storms out there at your offices?
Yeah, we're trying to move into a phase where we call decision support services. We're not only just putting our forecast together behind the closed doors and hitting a button and sending it. We're actually providing interpretive services to some of our more core partners, usually the emergency management community, and other agencies that have vulnerable venues that the emergency manager wants us to help with. But we're providing that interpretive information so that we can give you not only there's a 30% chance of strong storms today. What does that mean to me? So we can kind of give more timing, more localized impact for communities that need it. Giving that extra level of service instead of just hitting a button and sitting back going, there, well, we got it out. All right, let's take a break. We're trying to follow up and be that next step and fill the gap between forecast and something occurring, and give more information so that people can take action to do whatever they need to do to protect either their agency or their event or their home or their livelihoods.
Very good.
Cool. All right. Well, you mentioned the forecast for next week. We got heat, 5 days, where it's going to be like 90 degrees or so.
Right.
Logan County Fair is coming up. What can we expect to see the first week in August?
It's going to start out pretty hot, but then there is going to be a cold front going through in the middle of the fair. It looks like there's several different models, right around the 3rd or the 4th, and I know that's kind of right in the smack dab in the middle of the fair. So unless things change, there's probably at one point going to be a cold front moving through with potentially some severe weather. Once we have a heat dome set up over Illinois, and then a cold front kind of blasts into that, typically see some really heavy rain and potentially some strong winds. So, we'll have to be ready for that, and the fair director will be on board with having direct contact with them to make sure they know when situations like that are going to develop. But it's going to be hot. I can't see a scenario right now where it's going to really be cool. So make sure there's plenty of water available, or you bring water or whatever you need, because I know animals are at the fair, so there's going to be some heat stress potentially there, at least for the first couple of days. And then once that cold front goes through, maybe the last couple of days of the fair might be more comfortable-ish.
Sounds like a typical fair, right?
Yeah. So, but yeah, always want to be prepared to be overhydrated before you even go into an event like that, because you can hydrate yourself up several days before a heat wave comes in, and your body will, I do triathlons and Ironman races, and I'll hydrate, 3-4 days ahead of time to make sure that my body is fully hydrated before I go into an event where I'm, exerting myself for 6 hours or more sometimes. Yeah.
Wow. So we've talked about there have been more developments in terms of the radar and the technology. Can you kind of look into the future? Is there some technology on the horizon that is going to make your job easier, or maybe make you be able to find details and information that you can't currently always access?
Yeah, the next phase of radars coming in are probably going to be what's called a phased array radar. It's the technology that's used on Navy ships for the Aegis cruisers, or it's basically a defense system and a missiling system. So in the Navy, they have 4 panels that are static on the ship, and they're looking in all directions. But for the weather, there was some blind spots still, so they're using one panel for We've been testing it in Norman for maybe even 8 years now, where we're trying to get the algorithms, because even when you take a flat panel and you spin it, it's still, you can get some side lobes and things that make it not a useful signal. So we're working on it, and it costs money. Nothing's free. So we're trying to build a plan in probably 10 years. Hopefully it's less than that, but we'll have a new system of radars starting to get into the field, because there's a lifespan on these radars. I mean, these radars are called 88D radars, and that's because in 1988 is when they were really kind of formulated initially, and a lot of the structures are aging out, and we're doing a service life extension program. It's called a SLEP, S-L-E-P, and we're replacing the bull gear that the whole radar spins on. We're replacing the generator below, and we're replacing a lot of the parts in that service life extension program, so that these radars, which had about a 20 to 25 year life expectancy, and that's already passed. So we're giving them another 10 years, and then hopefully at the end of that next range, we'll be getting those new radars in, and hopefully, and that radar is it's like for the Navy, phased array is an instantaneous. I mean, they're tracking missiles coming at a ship at Mach 1.8. Mm-hmm. So it's instantaneous information. We're spinning a panel, so but every minute we'll get a volume scan or so, which is great, because right now we wait 2 to 3 to sometimes 4 minutes for a volume scan, because the radar spins, it goes up and it spins. This radar doesn't have to tilt. It scans the atmosphere by changing the phase along a panel with electronics. So it'll change the phase of the signal that's from the top of it to the bottom. So it's automatically scanning the entire atmosphere in one direction without going half degree, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5. It doesn't have to go all the way around multiple times. One spin, and it's scanning a full volume of the atmosphere, which will give us more rapid information. Right. If we had a radar scan every minute or even less, depending on the ability of the radar to actually get information and make it usable. So that's where we're trying to make sure the algorithms are ready to go and help us. But that's going to be huge.
So speaking of technological developments, do you still use weather balloons out there?
Absolutely, yeah. That's another thing. I was going to mention that during the modeling part, but garbage in, garbage out. So we need a sample of the atmosphere that's reality. So we launch a balloon 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. And it's launched all over the United States and the world at the same time, and it's synchronized through Greenwich Mean Time. So it's midnight and noon in England, but midnight and noon in England all around the globe. For us, that's 6 a.m., 6 p.m. And then, in Europe, Russia, China, we launch balloons, and then we synchronize all that information into the computer model, so they have a sample of the atmosphere as large of an area as we can, and then we can forecast out using a real snapshot of the Earth, and then going forward. So the balloons are so important, and we'll launch more of them as severe weather is starting to develop in an afternoon. The Storm Prediction Center will say, "Hey, do you want an extra balloon at about 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock?" They're like, "Yes, please." We wish everybody could launch balloons, but they cost money. The hydrogen, the balloon, the device. So we try and make sure that it's an impactful usage of additional resources, and so that balloon radiosonde that we attach, the information is so vital for those computer models to accurately predict going forward.
You ever get any of those balloons back?
We do. We get the box sent back, but one fell just in the middle of Lincoln, I don't know how many weeks ago, but we launched it, and then the winds were so quiet, it just kind of drifted, and it might have gone in a couple of directions, but it ended up landing somewhere in town, and someone kind of tweeted a picture of it to us and said, "Hey, is this yours?" And we're like, "Yes, it is." We can't use them again. There's no refurbishing need. The old ones we did because there was a pressure cell in there that was expensive enough that they wanted to refurbish them, but now we changed how we monitor pressure in the devices, so they're a little cheaper and not necessary to be refurbished. So We don't. Even when we did refurbish them, we only got about 1 in 10 of them mailed back in the little bag that was attached to them. So most of the time they end up in a forest or in a farmer's field and plowed under and stuff like that.
Yeah, that happened when our family lived over in rural Beeson. We found a weather balloon. This would have been early to mid 70s, I guess. And I remember my dad had plowed it and said, "I caught something on the plow here," or whatever it was, and pulled it back, and there were the fragments of the balloon, and as well as it was a big white plastic box. And I don't know if I'm admitting something I shouldn't here, but I remember there was like a cover that we were able to pop off, and there was like this, it looked like a little magnetic strip or something on the top, I remember, but then the contents inside you couldn't really get to. But it was, I mean, we did our part. We took it to the post office. So.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just kind of neat to see. But you mentioned something earlier about the weather balloon launches and England and other countries. You're the National Weather Service, so I would expect that your office would be obviously based in the United States. But from the sound of what you just said, it sounds like there's sort of a global community, global partnerships, and folks working together to kind of track the weather worldwide, not just within the boundaries of the United States.
Yeah, exactly. The World Meteorological Organization is a community of all the countries' meteorological organizations, and there's an agreement with every country, regardless of you're in conflict or not, to share weather information. So all countries basically feed their information into the global modeling system, and it's through the World Meteorological Organization, and we have representatives from the National Weather Service periodically go to Geneva to have meetings with the WMO, and it's a close-knit community. I mean, weather is kind of universal, and we all agree that it's an important enough thing to share with everybody that there's no boundaries with that.
And you say they share their information regardless of military or political conflicts or things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's kind of a unique thing globally that doesn't usually happen with any other things. Yeah. So that's kind of neat. That's one of the things about weather I really enjoy is that the community is kind of a close knit one, and we really support each other across the board.
Cool. Well, before we let you go, I wanted to ask you about the tours. Do you still do tours out the Weather Bureau, Weather Station?
Absolutely, yeah. I coordinate those as people contact the office and want to have a group come through. We'll have scouts come through. We'll have schools come through, Kiwanis. Just any organization that sees a need, I'll try and fit it into our schedule. And sometimes we can even tie it to near when our balloon launches are. And that's one of the kind of neat things that people don't get to see too often. So, but we are open, and they just contact me at the office or the office in general, and they'll get someone in touch with me.
Very good. Is there what's the best way to contact? Phone number or social media? Or
email is probably best, edward.shimon@noaa.gov, or our office line is right on the website.
Okay.
It's 732-7321, I believe. Okay. And then there's a 3089 to get into our office as well. So
okay, very good.
Ways.
All right.
So, Ed, we appreciate you splitting your time with the Oasis Senior Center.
It's all right.
Sort of very nice of you to hang in there. All right, well, Ed, appreciate it. Ed Shimon, National Weather Service Office in Lincoln, our guest this morning on the Viewpoint program. Thanks for joining us.
Live video streaming of this event is made possible in part by WLCN's live stream technology sponsor, Me Realty, located at 602 Keokuk Street in Lincoln, and online at merealty.com. The preceding program is a presentation of WLCN 96.3 FM and WLCNonline.com.